So welcome everybody to the third day of a week of celebration of mind. We have 3 talks a day for 7 days. This morning's presentation is by Tiago Hirth, and it's called On the Power of Numbers. Tiago is coming to us from Lisbon, Portugal, where he works at the university at a Center for the History of Science and Technology. Is that right? In English, CIUHCT in Portuguese. And he's been in recreational mathematics for a long time. He's been involved with G4G for about a decade, and he actually works as a consultant for G4G in addition to working at the university and doing other things, a magic troupe, outreach, all kinds of things. So to summarize, I'd say he does research and education and performance. So that sounds like a real treat for us. Today, he is talking about one of the oldest collections. I don't know if a book is the right word, but collections of recreational mathematics.
It's great to be here. So thank you very much to CoM, Bob, and the whole organization, the whole G4G board for having these celebrations of mind, and also for thinking or inviting me to speak. And I was asking Bob on what I should present, and in the end, the Viribus Quantitatis is the one that's got selected. It is a topic that has been dear to the G4G community. I think it was first introduced by David Singmaster and Svani Bossi, who also published on it later on. But we'll see a slide on with that information. But I thought it was a good selection on what to present. It is the result of my master thesis work, and you can find the full length thesis online. What I'm going to try to do is to present a very thick book, well, this thick, in a Cliff Note version in under 20 minutes. So this is a Viribus Quantitatis study guide. So first off, who wrote the Viribus Quantitatis? So Luca Pacioli, he was a Franciscan friar. Nowadays, we call him Luca Pacioli, but exactly what his name is or was is a bit more complicated. Some call him Luca di Borgo, other Luca Bartolomeo de Pacioli, or Lucas Paciulu, or versions. It's 500 years have passed. How he would be named is lost in pronunciation and the books. But Luca Pacioli is a good way to characterize him. And below there are some images you can see with various depictions of Luca Pacioli. In the middle one by Montefeltro, and I'm looking sideways if you're following my screen because I'm presenting on a different screen, and I need to look there. In the middle here somewhere you have either this person or this person is set to be Luca Pacioli, and here in likely what would have been his duties as a scholar at court. In the very famous picture where supposedly Dürer, I kind of on the left you see Pacioli, and there's a very beautiful solid, and there's a person standing behind Pacioli in the middle who's said to be Dürer. I'm not sure how well my pointer is working, that's why I'm being more descriptive now, and I forget always to say this for the visually impaired. I'm trying to be as descriptive as possible, but very likely I will not do justice to the pictures, and I'm describing pictures. Anyway, so behind Pacioli there is possibly Albrecht Dürer, who will use magic squares, which is something that Pacioli would have done as a court person inclined with mathematics. I'm kind of hesitant to say court mathematician or court pedagogue or court, because all of those terms are a little bit anachronic, and he did maths, he did pedagogy, but those terms are modern ones. Anyway, here are some more images, more recent ones. For on the right you see for the 500 years of the Summa Arithmetica, there was a stamp, and I would really like to know which painting is depicted on the stamp. I've been searching for it for some time, and likely someone in the audience will be able to point me in the right direction. and also the statue, which was also inaugurated for Pacioli. But my favorite of all images of Pacioli is from the Summa itself. By the way, I have not introduced the Summa yet, but the Summa Arithmetica, and it has a very long title, is his, opus maximus. It's like the thing he wrote, which is an educational book on how to do mathematics, which was for the time in a very long span period in use, which were over 50 years. It was being used as a textbook all over places of knowledge, and this depiction is from within that Summa. About Pacioli, he was very likely born in the mid 1400s, so 1445 is usually the date credited, but as these sources go, it's not so hard, not so easy, because we don't really have a birth certificate, and it's, he is said to have died at the age of 70 plus in 1517, this is what's written on the tombstone in Borgo San Sepolcro, where he was also born. Nowadays, Borgo only, which is the number 1 here. And from there on, he would have a similar to other medieval scholar kind of life, where he would travel all over the different places. He was very likely raised in the house of a Venetian merchant, and so it's for me not not unsurprising that within the merchant community there are a lot of ideas and games already being thrown around, and so naturally, and when he starts his teaching the first manuscripts of topics related to recreational mathematics pop up. There is a very interesting treatise which has been published, and I can speak about it later if you want to, which springs forth from his teaching days, but I will not talk further about that. He travels all over Italy, so he also starts his basic training in the Giudecca district in a prestigious school. Travels so in Venice, then goes to Rome, and then there are records of him studying teaching in multiple universities like Perugia, Zadar, Pisa, Florence, Aquila, and Urbino. In 1496, he's set to be at court of the Sforza in Milan, and here it's also very likely that he starts to write his work De Viribus Quantitatis, which the rest of this talk is going to be about. And yeah, then his final days are passed in Florence, Rome. So after the Sforza have issues, he travels back southernwards, and apparently even shared an apartment with Leonardo da Vinci, but all of these things are a bit dubious in some points. Anyway, his main works are a translation from Latin, a Campanus version of the Euclid's Elements, the Divina Proportione, which popularized the golden ratio and much more. Sometimes the divine geometry is ascribed to this book, the origin of this name, and other books like Liscacci or Schifanoia, where he treats games of chess and other games. Yeah, but like I said, today the work is going to be about De Viribus Quantitatis, and for this I was hoping that I would be able to switch screen and show you. Well, let's do this differently. Well, how did I get to this book? Well, first of all, like I mentioned at the beginning, David Singmaster introduced it not only formally in an English-speaking environment, but also at the gathering for Gardner, and that's how I first came across it. How I got access to it was through a beautiful photo facsimile version done by Dario Uri, which is available online. I will be happy to share all the links later on, and through an English translation of an Italian transcript done by Laurie Pieper, who unfortunately is no longer with us. And I was very sad to never have been able to talk to her about the work, even though, yeah, there could have been the chance for this. Also, unfortunately deceased, Vanni Bossi, who was also part of the G4G community and who has done an amazing work in picking forth all the magic content from within the Viribus Quantitatis. Both David Singmaster's and Vani's accounts of the book are published in G4G publication, A Lifetime of Puzzles, and forthcoming also both are going to publish in the Adventures in Recreational Mathematics, which in preparation for this talk I was very, very excited to pre-order, and I hope, well, definitely it will be a masterpiece, and I look forward for its success. So when I got to the book, it first looked like this, which were digital photos. I created the PDF and I looked at it, and that was all the way I had to interact with it for some time. But on my 30th birthday, and this is a little bit personal in the middle of the talk, I apologize for the style mistake here, but I would like to share that on my 30th birthday, I actually got to interact with the actual book, which for me was the best 30th birthday present a human could possibly get, to read a 500-year-old book in person, and yeah. So this is how the book looks, and I'm happy to be able to share a few photographs throughout the talk, and yeah. So this is actually one of the versions of the book that exists. It is the Codex 194 of Giovanni Giacomo Amadei, who was a canon at the Basilica Santa Maggiore somewhere in the 18th century. Nowadays, it's known as the Codex 250 of Bologna. There are said to be copies in the Cantonese Casantanese Library, Rome. I never got to check up on that. And there is a beautiful facsimile edition, which I showed early on, but which I would like to show quickly. So this is the beautiful facsimile book here with some bookmarks. And this is how the book looks in facsimile version. It's beautiful. It's published by Abaco Editora. If I'm sounding too much as of a salesperson, please don't take it this way. I really, really am excited about this book, and so I wish to encourage all productions that have followed around it. And yeah, so it's a big, bulky book, even in the facsimile version, and it's constituted of 309 folia, so pages, which are around 614 front and back pages. It has the index alone are 26 pages, and it has over 200 sections. What those sections are exactly, well, the author himself, so Pacioli, at some points calls them chapters, at other points just calls them an object or an effect. And so I will just go with the word sections, and later on, well, and later on in the book there are some parts which don't fall in exactly into a categorization, which I then call chapters instead. So hopefully this doesn't get too confusing. Much more important than these nomenclature things are, this is a huge book, there are a lot of things in there, and I'm hoping to share them within the next 10 minutes. The book has been studied over the years, and it is a beautiful book, and it's written in the hand of an amanuensis, which makes lecture much easier, because if you look at other works from Pacioli, his script is not exactly the most legible one. Also very handy for reading this is that it's written in a vernacular vulgare, so it's not in high Latin. It's closer to actual modern Italian, or a mixture of Italian. For me, it was easy to read because of the Portuguese. So it's that is a good thing. And the reason for this is that it was very likely intended for print somewhere in 1508. And we actually have a document saying, together with the Divina Proporzione and some other text, this was going to be printed. Unfortunately, it didn't get printed, or fortunately, I don't know, perhaps it wouldn't have survived because of Inquisition or something. I really doubt that it wouldn't have survived, but for some reason, it wasn't printed. And it has been, some people knew about it, but it has been more or less unknown outside of a certain circle. The first account we find is on the discussion of the opening letter, which is also one of the sources we have on Pacioli's life, and it's done in 1879 by Baldassare Boncompagni. In 1924 is the first mathematical discussion, and only of the first part, which is more related to arithmetic problems, but we'll get to that in a moment. And only in 1994 do we have an official transcription done by Augusto Maronini and Maria Garlasci Pairani. As mentioned before, in 2007, Laurie Pieper does an English translation, which is exclusive to the Conjuring Arts Research Center. And there's a commented facsimile, which I showed you earlier on, which is published in 2009. The photo facsimile is published in 2010, but it stems prior to this from 2000. I don't really know the dates, but there is already discussion on this, and I believe David Singmaster mentions it in an interview he gives in the Guardian, where he actually had access to it through a microfilm at the Warburg Institute, and then posteriorly got a CD with the images by Dario. So when exactly Dario did the pictures, I'm not 100% sure. I think I asked him at some point, but I do not now remember, and I haven't written it down. So after the mathematical analysis by Agostini in 24, David Singmaster speaks about it, and there is mention by Lawrence Rose in 2008. And I realized that I'm being very, very dry with all of these names and all of these dates. The reason for this is I want to be more or less inclusive for register, and I would really like to know some of these things, like Lawrence Rose's version completely disappeared. No one ever spoke about it anymore. So if anyone knows anything, please do tell me. And there is a PhD thesis in 2016 published by Francesca Aceto, and the master thesis I mentioned earlier on is from 2005. And yeah, so this is the whole theoretical context, background, historiography, and all the names that I wanted to highlight. There are many more people involved, of course, and I hope that I did everyone justice. But what I wanted to share, and what I think everyone is more eager out, is the actual content. And so the book is roughly divided in 3 parts, and I say roughly because they don't exactly follow all the same style guide. So the first part has a bit more than 80 effects, and these are effects that give the name to the book. They're called the Viribus Quantitatis, the power of numbers, and they go from anywhere from rep digits like here to the barrel problem, to river crossing problems, to magic tricks in multiple forms, and much more. But roughly that first part can be divided into 2 halves. The first half is more related to theoretical ideas. So you will find a lot of reference to Euclid's elements. This is what would be used in a classroom setting. And so equalities like you see here with the DQG at the very bottom. So if you multiply something by twice, add 5, multiply that whole sum by 5 again, and so on, and you proceed with these steps, you'll get the result, and then the magician guesses what the result is. And how does he do that? Well, he uses positional writing and gets to the answer. There are many more of these things that are rooted in the elements and so forth. So this is the formal part, where you use textbook ideas and try to get to something recreational. But also in this textbook half, you have, for instance, the discussion of one of the first known discussions of a subtraction game, which is an ancestor of later the NIM game, and well, can be explained using NIM. So this is the first this description is in there. There's the Josephus problem, and then in the more playful parts, you find some esoteric ideas like the magic squares and shifting puzzles, where someone has lost two pearls on a necklace, and how can you rearrange this necklace and so forth. All of these, are worth checking out. Everything, or so many things that you find in recreational mathematics at much later dates will have a counterpart here, and it's just astounding. So I'm going on the first. I'm going to try to give 2 examples for the first and second part. And so the examples for something theoretical is this one, and this is a well-known. Again, I could give numerous examples like river crossing problems or jeep problems, like the Borgo Perugia problems, but as they are discussed in Singmaster and in other places, I rather record something related to, in this case, to Chinese remainder theorem. And I'll give the audience a few seconds, and also myself, to catch my breath with the following problem. So someone was selling eggs on a square. Someone was playing ball or just being mean, broke all the eggs, and authority was called, and the woman did not know exactly how many eggs she had, but divided by pairwise divided, there was one left over. In triplets, there was one left over. In fourth, there was one left over, and so forth until divided into 7. There was also one left over. And the question is, how many eggs were there in all? And the crowd is still paying attention and will now reply immediately in the chat that the answer is 1. I will definitely use that as a joke the next time I present this. But the answer Pacioli is looking out for is 421. And the way you arrive to this is simply by multiplying and finding a common multiple of 2 to 7 and adding 1. So yeah, so this puzzle is credited back up to the 8th century. I'm not 100% sure this reference checks out, but this is an old puzzle and it appears in Pacioli. So this is part of the idea of formal content that Pacioli has, and he will go into almost a sort of recipe how you should do. You should take the first the pair and then multiply it by the triplet, and then you should multiply it by the 4 and so forth, and then he will go step by step and until you reach the correct answer. And actually the whole text is very much like this. This is a historical text. Much of the theoretical framework we have nowadays at our availability wasn't developed in the way we know it. Another cool thing, and hopefully the audience woke up after the theoretical exposure, is a magic trick. And for this, I will need someone from the audience to say 1, 2, 3, 4 exclamation point. Okay, Ricardo Teixeira, thank you so much for volunteering. Now I'm going to try to do two things at the same time, which is more than I usually do, and which is doing everything upside down. So you have seen this trick, and it's literally the oldest trick in the book, because it's an old book. You're going to choose a card in one of those rows, and you're going to tell me if it's in row 1 or in row 2. Row 2. So what was row 1? This was row 1, and your card's in this one. Okay. I'm going to pick up the cards. Oof. If this doesn't work, it's because I'm doing everything upside down. Oops. Ricardo, again, row 1 or row 2? Row 1. And again, I pick everything up. Final one. If this doesn't work out, I will explain the trick anyway afterwards, so you can tell me why it didn't work. Ricardo, row 2. Ricardo, I'm gonna ask you in a moment to tell me which card you chose, okay? And I'm going to just do what's commonly known as the milk shuffle, because it's also something that I think is in the contents of the book, namely under a different name called the Josephus Problem. But Ricardo, for the first time in the chat, what was the card you chose? Well, V is this one. Beautiful. Ricardo says yes, and I accept the utter silence of the internet as crazy applause, and I'm happy that the trick worked. So this is basically a very simple trick, oldest trick in the book. This is the kind of magic trick that you would learn as a kid. Thank you, Jim Gardner, for the crazy applause in the chat. And Pacioli actually describes it with coins. So imagine everything to do all of this with coins, where different coins are being stacked and shifted around. It might get a little bit more confusing. At the time, playing cards were not as popularized as now. But he does mention them, and he does say that, well, you could try it with playing cards as well. And he gives us a scheme that I'm displaying right now with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, all the way to R, which gets very confusing very quickly. And so instead, I'm going to quickly explain this content, which is in the second half of the first part. And so basically, it's a simple magic trick. What you do is you pick up always from the other row, and always so that you pick up from the other row, and alternatively, just from one end to the other, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, or bottom up, depending on which row the volunteer chose, you will choose. So you will start on the other one. This will leave the card in an even position, counting from the bottom once you have a package in your hand. You repeat this process a second time. This time it will be in a multiple of 4, and finally you will repeat the process a fourth time, which will leave it in the 8th position. Which, given that you only have 8 cards, will make it the first card, card, and then. What I did is include another thing of Pacioli's, which is the discussion of the Josephus problem, where you throw one away, keep one, throw one away, and keep one. And so, yeah, you start with the card in the first position, you keep it, and then you just go through that process, and you will keep the card. So this is a description of how to replicate the trick and an idea of what the mathematics does. Pacioli goes into this and says, you should do this and this and this, and very recipe wise. The second part is called on the virtue of the line, or and well, basically it does what the first part does for numbers, it does for geometry, and it starts off like the first part with a formal bit where you get to construct your own geometry devices. And then it goes into construction of multiple things that you find in the elements. Always with the idea that you should be as practical as possible to construct these things. In the second part, you find some discussion of other ideas which are related to more spatial or visual things, like, for instance, stacking 4 coins so that all of them mutually touch. And of course, you can do this with even more coins, as many of Martin Gardner's fan will know. And if you go into pencils or crayons or cigarettes, you can try to do the same thing with 7. Also, the magic squares. Pacioli says it's impossible to square a square with squares that are not all equal. So you cannot just divide it into an even grid. And he says if someone poses this problem to you, you should use frames. Well, he did not know that and didn't have access to graph theory. And later on, in the mid or in the early 19th century, this would be proven as an incorrect statement. You can actually do that. You can square squares with squares that are not all the same. He discusses how to divide a circle into multiple parts. And this is a picture I would like to also credit Adam Atkinson for. This is he introduces the Chinese rings, and this is a modern plastic version where you have elephants and where you need to shift the elephants so that they are all facing the same direction. Other things discuss philosophy. So the last 2 parts are definitely more in the recreational aspects, while the ones more on the left are definitely more theoretical ones. And stuff like where is it denser? Where do you have more water in the bucket? If it's on sea level, or if it's in a tower, which bucket has more water? Assuming that the bucket has the same volume size, and this was being discussed at the time. Or how to burn a candle so it doesn't go out while it's floating in water. But for the example, for the theoretical example, how can you divide? How can you measure the distance between a riverbank and where you're standing without crossing the river? And the idea is you make use of the elements. So this is element book 3, proposition 35. You need to use that, and then you need to use some arithmetic, namely, well, Pacioli doesn't necessarily go into this, but he explains how to get there and how to do the construction. So basically what you shoot is you shoot an arrow with the rope tied to it onto the other side of the river, and then you make an arch. You are able to produce an arch, and what you're going to do is you measure a straight line between 2 points of that arch, and then you measure the arch, the midpoint of that segment to the longest extension. And for those who have already lost me, there's a scheme here. If you have this description is the end point where you shot the arrow to is point E. To the rope is the diameter of the circle that you will thus trace. So the end point that you're holding should be point B. And what you're going to measure is 2 points on the shore, point A and point C, from which you will measure midpoint, point D. And then you're going to see how much the excess of D B is, and then you just substitute in the formula, and you actually get the distance BE. So you use the square of AC divided by DB and so forth. Anyway, so this is the idea of a formal thing. Actually, very nice application if you want to measure the size of a river. How much it has been used in that sense, I'm not entirely sure. Another use Pacioli says to do this is to measure the height of a bell tower. So basically what you're holding is the rope for the bell, and then you can just measure it to both sides of the tower, and you can calculate the height of the bell tower and impress your friends with this. On a more practical side, well, on the more recreational side, Pacioli speaks about entanglement puzzles. Of course, he does not call them exactly entanglement puzzles, but he speaks about great things to vex people with. And so this is a reproduction of the puzzle. There is an image showing from the book, and I'm showing in my camera a wooden block puzzle with ropes, which is the same puzzle. And the idea is to remove the wooden block without someone letting go of the other end of the rope. Fun fact, I brought this to G4G some years ago. I vexed many high world-class mathematicians and topologists with it, and there were children who did it in under a minute. So Pacioli was wrong once again, and you can vex adults more than you can vex children with these kind of puzzles. Finally, the last part is dedicated to other marvels of nature, and it has multiple chapters in it. There's one which has 18 sections on topics as diverse as encryptation, everyday recipes like making your own ink, removing ink, all of those things that you would need as someone in the 15th century. But also how to make gimmicks for magical practices to entertain guests on big occasions, and other things like Pacioli encouraging people to dip their hands into molten lead. You see, it will be fun, he says. And actually, there is an episode on Mythbusters, which is exactly this experiment. I will skip this part, but yeah. So there are also discussion of multiple illusions, like the T illusion, where you have two exact same sized pieces of a line, and even though when they are shaped as a T, one seems bigger than the other, they are exactly the same size. But also the Aristotle's illusion, where you have it's a physical puzzle where if you cross your index and your middle finger and touch your nose, for instance, you will feel two nose tips, or if you do exactly the same thing and touch a marble, it will seem as if there are two marbles. It works better if you do it to someone else and they're not aware of this, or if you have your eyes closed and someone does it to you and you pretend you're not aware of this. But also, I don't know, most people have seen for sure the science trick where you put an egg inside a bottle using the power of vacuum, which you create by burning something. Pacioli speaks of this already. Well, it is, again, something that's very old and used to entertain people, but also how to grow a pear inside of a glass bottle, which makes it seem impossible for it to have gotten there, and then modernly use this to present beautiful spirits in an even more intriguing way. And I guess the same would have been done at the time. And the other documents, they speak, mainly about riddles, jokes, and pranks. There are the first combinatorial poems in there, which I unfortunately forgot to include in this presentation. But well, this will be all the more reason for you to check out the book. And I would like to end with some jokes or with some riddles for the Latinists in the audience. Forgive my horrible pronunciation of that language. Si lupus est agnum, non est mirabili magnum. Alludit est procomidit agnum. And if you didn't get the double entendre, it is because est and est is homophone. So being and eating is the same. So if a wolf is a lamb, don't worry. It's not being. He is actually eating the lamb. Or other problems that you find already in Pacioli is how can you place 10 horses in 9 stalls. This is an English adaptation. He would use the same thing with pigs, I believe, so that the way to divide the animals works properly. Well, not animals. I'm not gonna give it away. And really bad jokes. This one about the priest who is who knows, or this one about someone who how do you despair someone, and you tell him to climb into a pear tree and let himself fall down. This is called despairing. So first dissing this pair kind of joke. Anyway, it's better not to think too much about this. Also palindromes and classical riddles like how can you split an egg among 2 sons and 2 fathers so that each gets a whole egg, or what are 32 red horses in a red stall. So these are also classical riddles that already appear here. So basically the Viribus Quantitatis is well, it does for recreational mathematics. It collects a lot of folklore that will likely not have been the first or original content in the work, but it gathers them in a literary document for the first time, and this makes it an amazing book, and it's a great place to look at it historically and start to jump other places. And I hope that I have somewhat caught your attention, and for people who would like to check out more, please do visit all online sources, which I will hope to point out in a moment in the chat. And if you need any more pointers or want to discuss or outright have caught multiple mistakes in my presentation, which I'm sure there have been many, please do email me, and I'm happy to talk more about these things. And apologize right away that in the heat of the moment I might have been a little bit reductionary in some things or been outright wrong. But yeah, so I'm happy to be corrected and talk more about this.
Thank you so much, Tiago. That was both fun and fascinating. I want to read it. I didn't realize some of those things were so old. Wow. You've got a lot of appreciation and other comments. What is the name of the book? Gordon wants to know. Is there an online English translation, or is that in your thesis or what?
So what the thesis does, it gives it's a descriptive account of what is inside the book. There is an English translation by Laurie Pieper. The book is called Viribus Quantitatis. The English translation for this is The Power of Numbers. And there is a beautiful facsimile in Italian. There's lots of work in Italian on this. There's an interesting thesis in French. And there are many papers, and David Singmaster from the G4G community has done a lot of work in promoting the book and in studying it. So there will be, as I mentioned, a publication coming forth called Adventures in Recreational Mathematics, which will come out this October.
So it's not for free online, but it is available to buy.
Yeah. For free online, you can find the Italian site
in English. Yeah.
Google
Okay.
Translate does some things, does help people who are not fluent.
Those tricky subtleties, though. And Ellie asked whether that puzzle that you showed us with the wood and the rope, whether that's commercially available.
I believe there are multiple versions. There are modern versions of this puzzle. It's not very difficult to replicate. It's a wooden block with 3 holes in it, and you loop a piece of string through it. So it's very easy to self-produce, and I even use it as a, how you call it, a visitation card, a name card that you give people, and so you have a small puzzle.
Ellie, you can make it out of fabric and yarn. Okay, and Alexandra wants to know what's the next manuscript you're going to study, whether you have any plans to.
Well, I'm currently studying other manuscripts, but I will not disclose until I have published work on it.
Okay. Ellie asked if you could put the picture back up so she could see it again.
I can show you.
Show the real one.
So basically, I can show you how to set it up. So basically, you have a wooden block. There are 3 holes. So 1, 2, 3. You loop a closed piece of string so that there's a loop on this end, and you fiddle through the other ends, which I have tied already together in a knot through there. So basically, it goes through 2 holes, through the loop, and then these ends, once they are looped through the loop, they go back through the hole and the very bottom. And this is how it looks. So it's basically like this, and it looks like it's impossible because there is this loop is closed around this, and these ends will be held by someone in the audience, or these are non-movable. Everything has to happen around this piece. So you can tie these to a piece of furniture, or have someone hold them, or just not use them.
As far as your talk being more than 20 minutes, Tyler said it seemed like it was only 10 minutes because, as you know, time goes fast when you're having fun.
Cool. Thank you, Tyler. That is a very nice and friendly comment.